Hello everybody, my name is Maria and I'm an artist. Today I want to show you my self-portrait in oils. This is how the final result looks, and you can see all the details up close. This frame design and canvas format are my favorite at the moment. So, at the very beginning of the work, I mix paints on the palette, selecting the skin tone and comparing it in the mirror. And the first thing I will do is outline the composition with a few strokes. And almost immediately I move from the liner designation of the composition to the largest spots of shadows. These are in the eye sockets, on the side of the face and on the neck. I continue to outline spots of shadows on the hair. Take a new brush and turn the camera. At the moment the composition is outlined on the canvas. This is the most important thing. This is what I'm focused on at the initial stage. I mix the shade of the shirt on the palette so that with a large spot I can coarsely lay out the overall shape and immediately understand the approximate shade. I add this color with reflexes in the shadow parts of the face. Then I add light spots to the shirt and go back to the face, choosing a cooler light shade of the skin, trying to maintain the warmth and coldness of the painting. I highlight lighter areas on the already outlined light volume with accents, but all this is without details, only the most general forms. My two tasks now are to catch the most general shapes without wasting time on details. First, the main thing is to close the entire canvas as soon as possible. I will have the basic relationships of colors, lights and shadows, and only when I am completely satisfied with my composition I will begin to detail the portrait. I mix a new shade. You can call it the third on the palette. The first is the color of the skin and the second is the color of the shirt. They are already on my palette. And now I just outline such a dark interesting purple color and designate the darkest areas with this color so as not to get confused later. That is, nothing will be darker than these marked zones. For example, the side of my face is also turned away from the light, but this shadow zone will still be much lighter than these very dark areas that I just marked with several dots. I continue to solve the original fundamental task to close the canvas as soon as possible. And the last spot that still remains untouched is the background, and I begin to gradually designate it. I mix the shadow color for the face, and you can see, as I said, despite the fact that it is quite dark, this shade is still much lighter than the darkest purple before. I clarify the large spots already inside the larger spots. In general, the whole picture is always just a collection of spots. I would even say not just the picture, but all life and everything around, all space, everything we see with our eyes. These are all just spots. We see in spots. I add spots on the background. Here I also try to do everything with a thin layer and not paint impasto. That is, at the initial stages there are no thick layers of paint. Everything is subtle. Somewhere I even leave an empty canvas. As you can see in this work and also in my other completed works, I like to leave empty areas of the canvas. I just like the way it looks. A combination of an untouched canvas and so that the viewer can see areas of empty canvas between my brush strokes. And this is the main point why this canvas is now my favorite. It is not white initially. Due to this, it doesn't stand out and doesn't draw attention to it. It has such an interesting complex color of beige gray, which allows it to beautifully, but on the same time modestly, complement my paint strokes. On the subject of the fact that I try to work in thin layers at the beginning and leave empty areas somewhere, for example, now there was a blank canvas in the areas of the hair, and it looked good enough. It could have been left if it was the background, but since this is the foreground, here I will add relief, thick strokes to enhance the planing and contrast with the transparent thin layer background. In this portrait, the central object is the person, that is me. Therefore, I will paint myself with thicker strokes. For example, on my hair, I already applied a fairly thick stroke, and on the forehead, where the hair touches, I also immediately applied a confident thick stroke without hesitation, because in the sketch format of quick work alla prima, you must train to quickly find accurate strokes. I don't deny myself anything. I don't hesitate. I work right away with bright colors, because I know that I won't have much time to go back and finish the portrait. I only have 2 hours and that's it. After them I will never return to this portrait again. So I have to do everything at once. So I closed the background, I'm happy with the completed composition, and it's time to clarify the details. This is the second task that I am now pursuing. The most important and primary fundamental task in each of my works, which at the moment you can already see I have completed, is the compositional solution of the picture. The composition on the canvas is completely outlined, all common spots are placed. More preciously, there are 4 main spots. The first is a lantern spot, the second is a blue shirt, the third is a leather spot, and the fourth spot is a blonde hair. The brightest thing about this work is the hair. I have already talked about the darkest purple dots, and also in the first stages I immediately designate the lightest ones. But now all the midtones and halftones I will clarify in the process. Finding them is a more subtle work. So, the background is closed. I'm happy with the composition, and now I'm refining the shape. This is the second task I'm doing now. Now I set myself two tasks. First, to convey the similarity of a person, to capture his character, unique features, and secondly, to understand color relationships. Because painting is, of course, a combination of as many colors as possible. This makes it lively and interesting. If color and various shades were not important to me, then it would already be monochrome graphics. Yes, in a quick 2-hour sketch, I, of course, try to convey the similarity of a person. Well, in this case, so that in the portrait I look like myself, recognizable, but this is more at the level of impression. I don't aim to convey an exact photography copy. Firstly, there is a mirror for exact copies. I can see myself very accurately in the mirror. Secondly, for an exact copy, I can still take a photography. In the photography, I will instantly be exactly as it is, with all the detail. There is a camera for that. I'm not starting to compete with it. We perform different functions. The function of camera, like a mirror, is precision, and my function in a 2-hour sketch in oil is to convey my impression of the moment I saw, convey my own personal inner artistic feeling, what cameras and mirrors don't see. In Russian language there is a catchphrase, I'm an artist, this is how I see it. For me it sounds more like an excuse. I myself don't use it, but the truth is that everyone really sees differently, and our impressions of what we see are different. This is also why painting is interesting. I love looking at paintings by masters, but each of them painted differently. Everyone is different, no one creates the same art. I'm trying to convey my impression preciously at this moment for these 2 hours. This is how I saw myself today, on this day, for this angle, preciously in these conditions, which are not repeated in this life. Another time I'll put everything differently and I'll see myself as a completely different person, and a completely different portrait will come out. But that's another story. And now I continue to refine the larger spots into smaller ones. I'm looking for a shadows and lights relationship. There are already a lot of different shades on the palette and on the canvas. Everything becomes more accurate over time. This is the way to install the palette. Vertical, I'm using it for the first time and I really like it. Very comfortably. Previously, I just had the palette lying on the table or took it in my hands. But this vertical method feels more comfortable. All 3K objects, mirror, palette and canvas, are in the same vertical plane. I'm also comfortable working on a large palette, so that it is no smaller than the canvas. In general, in painting during the work process, comfort is very important to me. It is important for me that nothing distracts or interferes, in order for all the energy to be directed towards creating the picture and not solving inconveniences. They must all be resolved before work begins. It is important for me to be focused and always hurry in an orderly manner in this concentration. Because time is limited, I need to remember this. I can't be distracted by anything. I can't draw out just one detail. I need to monitor everything idle all the time and carry out full work at the same time. That is so that each section of the canvas is at the same stage of creation. And I always keep in my head the thought that at any moment I will be called out. I will need to run away and it will all end there. Accordingly, at any moment the picture should look complete and interesting, even if there are no eyes. That's how it is now. Eyes are generally the last thing I painting. First I'm painting the shape of the head, hair, well, the largest areas. And the eyes are a small part of our head, especially our portrait, especially when compared to everything else. So this is the last thing I do. In my case, I will also paint glasses. When you look at me, they catch your attention first of all, because they are in the foreground closest to the viewer. But I will paint them even after the eyes, last and with the thickest strokes. As I said, the background is a thin layer, it is farthest from the viewer, and the hair is a thick layer of paint and the glasses are even thicker in order to convey the texture of the plan. This is a very important idea. Due to different textures and different densities of paint application, the plan is conveyed and affects a person's perception of the picture. An unfinished work with large main spots without details suits me much more than if the eyes were drawn in detail with every eyelash, but everything else was missing. Because I still paint a portrait of myself, portrait of the artist, and not eyes with eyelashes against the background of a blurry person, an artist. At this stage, more than half of the painting time has already passed, and here I'm already clarifying the lips. And I still continue to model the shape of the head, exploring the shape of the skull, all its bulges and depressions. The nose is the brightest bulge, closest to the viewer. It receives the most light, and the darkest area is the eye sockets. They are holes in the skull, and they are in the shadow. I always analyze in my head what is closer and what is farther, what is darker and what is lighter. So the moment has come when I'm ready to a little refine my eyes. And I finally placed 2 large spots on the pupils and irises, and immediately move on to other details, return to painting other moments, the shirt, the hair. I always painting everything at the same time. I don't paint just the eyes. This is not a portrait of eyes. I don't just paint eyes. This is not a portrait of eyes. This is a portrait of a person. And there are more important things in a person, such as a shirt and a hair. No matter how strangely paradoxical it may sound, these things are really more important in this case. Well, I'm already happy with everything, satisfied with the hair and shirt that are important to me. And by the way, I also very quickly marked the shirt with large spots. I didn't paint it any details there for a long time. I attached much more importance to the face in this portrait. Only now I am starting to work on the details before my eyes. I try to find shape, light, shadow there. There will be no counting of eyelashes. There will only be strict spots of great relationships. Every person's eyes are always in the shadows since they are in the sockets. And the eye sockets are these big holes in the skull. Accordingly, a person will not have pure white eyes. Everyone knows that in the eyes the whites are pure white, but under the shadow they become darker, and here it is important to get as accurately as possible into the shade that is visible on the model. As you can see, the whitest are much darker than the cheek, then the highlight on the cheek, then the highlight on the nose, to say nothing of the hair. I have already said that in this case the largest thing I see is the hair. More and more refinements of color and shape. This stage is already the third stage, the final one. I try not to spoil everything good that already exists and carefully add the last important accents and details. I keep 2 thoughts in my head. First, about how I see myself in the mirror, and second, how the shape of the skull is structured. What depressions are there? Where are the shadows? Where are the lights? Thus, it turns out to clarify the shape of the head. On this video you can still see very beautiful snow outside my window. Very snowy Moscow February days, and I am glad that they were so in the frame and now you can admire them with me too. At this stage my camera turned off. Hearing this sound I corrected there. And on the right, now I decided to add a slow motion version of the time-lapse to the last 5 minutes of the video, and once again see the entire creation process from the very beginning. And on the left, in a slower mode, I continue to refine the smallest details with the tiniest brushes. I think, how can I implement everything planned in this portrait? I am so pleased with the result that I can add the best to make everything work out as I intended. I like that you can see how there was nothing on the right, and now on the left there is more detail, but what is more important is the composition. And composition is an idea, and the way an artist paints this composition in oil is a technique, and altogether mastery. What's on the right is the composition, and what's on the left is just the overlay of details on top of this composition. Composition is the most important thing. Ready to endlessly praise the importance of composition in painting. Composition is my everything. I generally believe that you can be wrong about everything. You can paint something that doesn't look similar, the colors are boring, but if there is a strong, good composition, then everything will be fine. Everything may look in this case as if it was intended. Initially, when I start any work, I already have an idea in my head of what will end up on the canvas. It's important for me to have this approach. And now I'm already drawing glasses, as I said, with the densest strokes, but at the same time I don't paint clear lines everywhere. Somewhere there is a dense line, and somewhere I want to leave space for the viewer to figure out its direction. Such a play of color, line and texture is obtained. This is my idea of painting. And while I'm putting on the last spots, I want to thank you for watching. I will be glad to receive feedback, and if you liked my format, I will be glad to shoot more. I like to manage my Instagram account. I post a lot of videos there showing the process of creating paintings in an accelerated format, mainly portraits from life. And on YouTube, I liked the opportunity to explore this topic in more detail and share my thoughts while working. You can still observe during the entire video, especially after half of it, that I constantly tilt my head like this, lean back and forth and look at the canvas. In this way I try to refresh my view, to see the work from new points of view. Because after looking at one point for 2 hours, my eyes getting very used to what I see. And now the picture is finished. I'm showing the final result up close. There is a recent landscape nearby. Both paintings are framed in the frames that I like best now. This is also important to me and influences perception and complements art. I shoot in natural light from a window so that all colors and shades can be seen without distortion. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.